Mantra and the Sacred Fire, Module 10. Mantra is, one of those other things that is misunderstood, misrepresented. But we're going to do our best to understand and engage with mantra in alignment with the teachings and the guidance of the Himalayan tradition. I'm kind of obsessed with mantra. It is the pinnacle of my personal practice, and I really do believe that it is the reason that I have been able to become a better person. If you knew me 2 decades ago, if you knew me a decade ago, I was a bit of a mess. And yoga asana was helpful, pranayama was helpful, but it was really when I was introduced to mantra and began working with external invocations through mantra, like the daily prayers or chanting aloud, something like the Gayatri mantra or the Mahamrityunjaya mantra. But more significantly, at least for me, and the suggestion would be that it is more significant generally, is the internal silent repetition of mantra that we engage in at the sort of pinnacle of our meditation practice, that really has the capacity to cut through all of the crap and heal our mind as quickly as possible. One of my teachers early on told me that what would take 12 years to accomplish through asana alone can be accomplished in 6 months of a dedicated mantra japa practice. So 12 years, 6 months. Mantra is gold. It is gold. It also could be described as fire. So thus the sacred fire that is being referred to here. The fire stage of practice is also considered sort of the peak or pinnacle of the Tantric Hatha practice, or the Tantric Hatha path of yoga sadhana. And again, we touched on this in the introduction to the module on the moon, sun, fire methodology, but the stages of fire practice are illumination and absorption as sort of the final steps of all of yoga sadhana, if you will. Absorption in particular, meaning samadhi, which is that 8th limb of yoga, according to Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, chapter 2 in particular. This absorption happens once we have managed to purify the contents of our mind so thoroughly that all that is left is pure consciousness, the divine. And this allows for this effortless reabsorption back into what we came from. Mantra is going to accelerate that significantly. There are mantras that are considered open or unlocked in our tradition, and there are mantras that are considered locked. And they are locked not because there's any sense of exclusivity, but they're locked for our protection as practitioners and also to preserve the potency of the mantra itself. So we will be working with mantras that are considered unlocked, and hopefully, sort of depending on everyone's relationship with mantra, we will be able to bring in something that you have not worked with before. I know several of the people that are at least looking at this training are familiar with the Sri Sukta, for example. So we may revisit Sri Sukta, or we may move into the Shiva Sankalpa Sukta, or we may move into the Vishvadeva Sukta, something that holds a tremendous amount of potency in a cluster of mantras, which is what Sukta translates to roughly, that has the capacity to shift many different aspects of life that are all oriented toward something singular in a very accelerated way. We will also be looking at working with the fire element beyond its elemental form as not only a symbol or a representation of the divine, but as the divine itself. So in fire practices. Also, when working with mantra japa, how can we invoke the divine, honor the divine through our practice in a way that helps us to transmute all of the contents of the mind that are keeping us stuck or slowing the pace of our acceleration, of our evolution, of our liberation. How can we throw that into the fire to make it an offering that will lead to fairly significant breakthroughs in our spiritual development? So that is this particular module. Again, first and foremost, how can we engage as practitioners? And then we will also look at, how do I share this with students? What is appropriate? There are certain mantras that are appropriate for weaving into a complete practice, either as an invocation or using mantra throughout the asana practice, or potentially introducing for mantra japa for students that don't necessarily have much of a background with mantra. This can be a really great sort of foray into mantra sadhana. And then where to take people when they become a little bit more established, a little bit more developed. What would be next? How can we incorporate mantra in a way that invites people to engage further while still really honoring the tradition and the potency that is mantra? One thing I will say about that just like fire is not a symbol of the divine, mantra is not a symbol of the divine either. It is the sound body of a specific expression of divinity. So we don't want to objectify it. We don't want to minimize it. We don't want to use it to seem more educated, well-trained, experienced. We want to have a direct, deep relationship with it and then share from that space. So that's module 10. I hope that it makes you excited, even though it's a little esoteric, a little mysterious. Hopefully that will perk your interests even more.